Hi, I'm Lally. I run the Portal Bookshop, which is based in York and specialises in LGBT everything. And I spent a lot of lockdown last year distributing free copies of the Trans Teen Survival Guide to anyone who needed it. There were a lot of people who didn't feel safe or comfortable at home, didn't have supportive families, and needed some help and some guidance. And this book was absolutely perfect. So,
Yeah.
on that note, the author's here.
Hey, hello. Hi, Lolly. Thank you so much for all of that. And we'll do a quick introduction, I suppose. I'll go first since I'm speaking. My name's Fox Fisher. I'm a non-binary trans-masculine person, and an artist or creative person, which manifests in filmmaking, books, screen printing, illustrations, and so on. And it's all pretty much to educate on LGBTQIA stuff with a specific focus on trans issues. And I do a lot of my work with my partner,
Yeah,
Owl.
I'm Owl or Ugla, whichever. Ugla means owl in Icelandic, so that's kind of why I use both simultaneously. But yeah, I'm an author, I'm a writer, activist, filmmaker. I do a lot of things. When people ask me what I do, I kind of never know what to say because I do a lot of different things. But yeah, mainly we do books and film, and the Trans Teen Survival Guide and the Trans Survival Workbook is the two books we've done in parallel, which is quite good. Yeah.
That's right. And we're just in chats at the moment about creating an audiobook version of the Trans Teen Survival Guide because, yeah, we feel that it's just more accessible. Some people just don't want to sit down and read a book, and we just think there's a lot of need for it. So yeah, we're going to be pushing ahead and creating that over the next couple of months. So watch this space. And what else? We've got our Trans Survival Workbook coming out. By the time this is out, the Trans Survival Workbook will be out, which is a companion guide to the Trans Teen Survival Guide. And we just felt like it was really necessary to create something like that, which had enabled people to have a bit more involvement with their own gender identity and just kind of, and so it's kind of playful, hopefully playful ways for people to explore that and to also learn about other types of gender identities. And it was a lot of fun to make, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna do a visual descriptor. So I am a brown person. I'm wearing a camouflage shirt, so you probably can't see that. People can't see me because of the camouflage, but I've got some plants to my left, and I've got I've got black hair that's my natural color, and it's quite short because I just got a haircut quite recently. And I'm sitting next to
you describe.
Oh, I'm gonna describe you. Okay, so I'm sitting next to a white person with some very colorful tattoos on their chest, and they have a long hair and a ponytail to the side, red-ish lipstick, and gosh, and they're wearing a black I think it's like is it a onesie? It's a jumpsuit. They're wearing a black jumpsuit, but you can just see the top part of them and the top part of me as well.
So I'm a white person with extremely frizzy brown hair. Think 80s music video with a headband holding it up. The classic gay plaid shirt and some cuddly dragons in the background. So I'll do some basic questions first. With how did you start off with the Trans Teen Survival Guide? How did you come to realize that there was a need for that, and what made you write that one?
It's a good question. Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, originally we had a friend who was running a website with a similar name, and it was basically the same. It was basically the idea that people could send in questions and they could get answers from trans people about all sorts of things trans related. And we just thought that there was such a wonderful way for trans people to connect with each other. And we just thought, what if there was a book that was a survival guide for trans kids? Because that's the thing that we would have wanted when we were kids, to be able to go into a library or bookshop and find a survival guide that would have given us the information we needed. So it was kind of born of the idea that we wanted to create something for our past selves that, you know, we could have had, and then use it now for people who need it. So that was kind of the original idea. And then we just sort of, yeah, started having talks about how we could do that, what could fit into it and stuff. It was quite a long process, but yeah.
Yeah, it was actually a Tumblr post, Tumblr site back in the day, and you know, it's just really, really necessary at the time. And this, the Trans Teen Survival Guide on Tumblr, I think it's still out there. And at the time that we were interacting with the people there, it was, they'd have these, you know, you could ask a question and there were thousands and thousands of questions from people that were still unanswered. So we started off by creating these vlogs where we were answering some of those questions, which we have available, I think, on our personal YouTube site. And that was also called the Trans Teen Survival Guide. And we worked with someone called Chrissy Bentley, who was just such a beautiful person, and she was the one who was helping to manage this Tumblr site. And so we reached out to her when we wanted to make the book, because it seemed like the obvious choice for the name of the book. And she kind of said, you know, that seemed like a really good idea, and she was happy for that. And unfortunately, Chrissy never saw the publishing of the book, because she died by suicide, and that really broke our hearts. You know, it was really, really sad, because Chrissy has provided so much support for other people. And you know, I think we both felt a huge sense of loss with the friendship, and also for not being able to help her, you know, somebody who was also, it's so funny because she seemed like such a beacon of light and such a support for other people, and yet we were fully unaware of how much she was struggling too. So it was a real lesson for us as well, you know, to really check in with people, and to really it's just really sad, you know. It was, I don't know what the lesson was really, but just that people are really, you know, there's lots of vulnerable members of our community, and you know, things like the lockdown recently hasn't helped with that situation at all. And which is why it's so amazing. It was so wonderful to hear about what you were doing by reaching out to people with that guide. I mean, that just really touched our hearts. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you for your help with it, because you did send me additional things to put in, which made a lot of people's day when they opened up their parcel, and they had a little bit of art as well from Fox, which was just absolutely lovely, above and beyond. Yeah, I think that does highlight the importance of it, doesn't it? That people really are struggling, especially in the current climate in the UK, let alone elsewhere. Things are really difficult. So I think the resources and the advice in the book are incredibly necessary and useful, and they're still very timely, even though the book is now a couple of years old. Yes. Everything's still relevant, which is slightly disappointing in a way, because we haven't progressed, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, you'd hope that things would have got better, but
I know.
Which is why it's great that you're bringing out the next one. Are you addressing how the landscape has changed over the last few years?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we try and make it as current as possible, and future-proof it as much as possible. But you're right. I mean, even with the films that we make as well, about, you know, through My Generation, you know, we make very simple films about people who are just living their lives, and it's almost like we want to be out of a job at some point, where people are like, yeah, you're trans, you know, who cares, you know, are you a good person, you know, and that should be, you know, first and foremost. And you know, there's just so much confusion around trans people still, that we find that actually the public awareness is quite basic, and you know, as with our community as trans people, we're so broad as well. You know, we can range from super young realizing who we are to super old realizing who we are, and that whole journey and different aspects of our gender identity. You know, it's such a broad spectrum, and you know, it's almost mission impossible to try and make a book that can help support everyone in our community. But hopefully the workbook is an opportunity for people to really fill in the blanks, and to feel like that's really, yeah, they can help to shape who they are, and have fun at it at the same time. So
yeah, and it's a slightly different turn of the because the trans survival a trans teen survival guide is more reading and more like the workbook is a lot more practical, a lot more creative. So people have a chance to write their own things and create things and do crossword puzzles and do all sorts of interesting activities in the book as well. So it's it's a bit more practical and art, artistic, I think.
Yeah,
but
so
it does address certain things that we felt maybe we didn't address in the previous book and stuff. So it was a chance for us to go into different topics as well.
definitely. And within it, we have a book within a book. So we've got a choose your own adventure section as well, which we really enjoyed making. I don't know if you remember doing those books where they're always like quite little and you just like, it's like flip to page 12 if you want to do this or that. And yeah, so we had a lot of fun creating that. And then basically the mission is to come out to your best friend, and you have to go to a party and see if you can catch them, but they're quite tricky to kind of pin down at the party. So that was cool. And we've got like a Kate Bornstein style quiz as well, which was so sweet because Auntie Kate, God bless her, she we kind of like honored her and her gender workbook, which they have, and it was just like a real pleasure to create a book which honors some people in our community. And it's just nice to create this book. And it was kind of under duress as well, because last year we were part of a literary agency which was the same one as J.K. Rowling, and we were kind of becoming increasingly aware of just certain tweets or certain kind of examples where we were just feeling a bit anxious about where J.K. Rowling stood with trans issues, and then reflectively where our literary agency stood with trans issues. And we're quite aware that we were just like, it was a David and Goliath situation where we were David and we were very small peanuts. I mean, our books are very niche, and they were never going to make what J.K. Rowling can bring to the table. So we didn't feel like it was a very even keel. But we do a lot of education to different organizations, and we reached out privately first of all and sent a letter and said, could we have a conversation about this, and we'd really like to discuss. And there was very little interaction with us. They just kind of whipped us off the website and made a public statement. And then we had this huge backlash to deal with, where people were going, well, you're not J.K. Rowling, you'll never be J.K. Rowling. And we're like, well,
it's like we don't want to be J.K. Rowling.
it was really tricky. So there was a huge heartbreak around that, because we're so happy to have an agent, so happy to be part of their agency. And there was like a grieving process with that, and we're just about recovering now. So we managed to get 2 books completed around that time, the trans workbook and my other book, which is a whole bunch of fun to make as well, which is just a coloring book, a gentle coloring book. Yay! Brilliant. So we managed to complete what we wanted to achieve despite all the difficulties, and I think we should definitely pat ourselves on the back for that. But and here we are, and we've met our deadlines. They're coming out, so we can just kind of like draw a line on that and just try and move forwards. And we actually had a really great conversation with our first new agent since then a couple of days ago, and she just seems like a really good match. So we're excited to move forward with the new agency finally, and watch this space, because we've got some cool ideas for future books as well.
Really glad to hear it. I love that the Trans Pride colouring book as well, and the Choose Your Own Adventure there. These sound really fun. They're the fun explorations. It's proving that being trans doesn't have to be doom and gloom. I love you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, there's a lot of great books out this year. It just seems like loads of people have trans-related books. And if you are looking for something that's more academic or something that's, very specific to who you are, it's going to be out there. And that's such a wonderful thing, because, rewind 5-10 years ago, there was pretty much nothing out there. So thanks to Jessica Kingsley, for example, if you like this book, you can search a whole bunch of other ones. And of course, the great, really great movers and shakers like Monroe Bergdorf, Sean Fay, and Paris Lees all have books out this year as well, which is I'm really excited to read. Are they all memoirs? Or no, not Sean Fay's?
No, I mean, they're different types of books, I think, and they have different types. Like, I don't really know how to describe them, but they are a mix of talking about different issues and then personal and stuff like that. So yeah.
Sure, yeah, like Paris Lees's book isn't a trans book, for example.
Yeah,
It's a book
just,
about Paris Lees. So
yeah.
yeah, exactly. But it's, you know, it's very exciting times. It just, obviously there is a market for that kind of thing, and it's not just within the trans community. I think it's for people beyond to understand the family members or the workers better. And you know, I think we're really getting to that point where everybody is starting to know someone in real life who is trans, and wanting to learn more in order to you know, support them. So that's, yeah. Even though it's like 2 steps forwards, 1 step back sometimes, but I think we're still heading in the right direction. And yeah, it's just nice to be at this side of things and have support. I feel very blessed to have my partner as well. You know, we're kind of a good team, working on things. And you know, it's just so nice to be at this point in my life where I'm no longer surviving. You know, I'm actually, it's a cliche, but I'm actually feel like I am thriving. So it's just nice.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, the Trans Teen Survival Guide, and now moving on into the Thriving Guide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's going to be the next one.
The next one, the Trans Thriving Guide.
The Trans Thrival Guide.
Love it. I love how accessible they are as well, because as you say, everyone knows someone now. It's getting that way. So making it accessible to everyone is really helpful. I have a lot of cisgender people who want to understand, and with CN Lester's book Trans Like Me and with the Trans Teen Survival Guide, I have those resources now to hand. So thank you so much for that as well.
Oh, thank you.
One of the things I'd just like to ask about is the glossary. Because there are differences of opinion about certain terms and everything. Like people define non-binary differently depending on the non-binary person in question, like me. So that can be difficult to pin down. So I was wondering how you worked out the best definitions for that, and how difficult that was for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big disclaimer in it as well, saying like this isn't the definite, you know, definition of everything. Of course, it changes to different people and cultures and everything. And I think I've done a lot of traveling across Europe and across different, you know, LGBT communities. So I've sort of seen the different ways in which even different countries describe these different terms. So I thought you know, when we wrote those definitions, we tried to be as general as we could, and without, you know, defining it in a very specific way. And we just sort of, said the more sort of simple ways of describing those things, because, you know, those definitions are only very short ways of describing those identities. And, you know, if we would have had the space and the time, we would have made it like way longer than that. And it would have basically been like, there's no way to define these things. It's just about the people themselves. So we kind of just did very, you know, simple ways of defining them, and then made a big disclaimer saying this isn't necessarily the perfect way, and this might change, you know, tomorrow or whatever it is. So,
and specifically we're talking about, you know, it's almost like 2 umbrellas, or is it one? You know, it's like the trans umbrella, which could include non-binary people, and then there's the non-binary umbrella, which is genderqueer, gender fluid, and all other non-binary identities. So I think that both umbrellas mean that someone defines as something other than the gender that they're assigned at birth, and that, I think, is what unites us, regardless of how we, you know, what we do with that identity that we have and where we want to go with it, whether that's a medical or social transition or whatever. But it's definitely, I think, coming out as non-binary is an acknowledgement that you are that you feel different to that gender that you were given at birth.
And I think, you know, we kind of say that in the guide as well, like, you're the only one who can define who you are. So the definitions we write, you know, shouldn't govern anything. It's all about the people themselves and how they want to define that.
And although non-binary identities is, you know, it's age old, and if we look back, it's like a fault of colonialism for having this, like, this binary man or woman situation, you know, that we're in, and it's a huge relief actually to see the acknowledgement of more than 2 genders in lots and lots of different indigenous cultures. Non-binary in the space that we exist in has really only been talked about in the past 5-ish years. And I still think it's very early days of people's understanding of non-binary issues. I mean, as for anyone who saw that our chat with Piers Morgan a few years ago, ironically on IDAHOBIT, which is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and so on, we had this huge chat about or discussion, or whatever you want to call it, about being a train wreck about being non-binary. And it was just, I just feel like those types of conversations where we're made to seem like we're outlandish and ridiculous and stuff like that, I think that will cease. You know, I think that non-binary as an identity is not going to go away, and I think more and more people are defining within that, and yeah, that can only be a good thing. And I think it helps that people like for example, Elliot Page coming out recently and using the pronouns he, they, I think is really great, because it starts a dialogue about that. Demi Lovato as well, who came out recently as non-binary. That's awesome. And I know that there was a lot of backlash to that, but again, it's the start of a conversation about these issues. And I think the more famous or people with a platform, you know, who come out, you know, although their lived experiences can be very different to someone who is struggling to access healthcare and doesn't have, you know, huge funds, that, you know, the experiences are very, very different. I mean, Caitlyn Jenner versus just a trans woman who's trying to deal with the NHS, is their lives are complete opposites, really. But again, there's some element of understanding or recognition that I think is helpful in some way. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, I mean, when people see people like Elliot Page, you know, Elliot Page has access to private healthcare, to all these things, you know, their life is vastly different to the life of a trans person who can't, you know, access private healthcare and has to go through, especially in America, where it's really difficult to access healthcare in general and nothing's covered and stuff. So yeah, and these people give people hope, and they, you know, and they reach a wider audience that, you know, otherwise wouldn't be reached. So it's good for that, but people have to remember that these people are not representative of what it's actually like to be trans, because they have so much more privilege in society.
They're good for newspaper coverage and people getting things right there. There was a lovely little letter in the paper recently that was from an elderly couple who had no idea about most LGBT issues, but they'd read the article covering Demi Lovato, and they wrote into the paper to thank the person who wrote it, saying, now I understand non-binary. Great, I can accept this and move on. So it does make a change at that level. That's very...
Wow, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. I'd like to ask about the resources in the book, because that has been one of the most important things. Like the advice, absolutely on point, but the resources have been incredible. How on earth did you compile a list like that? How did you find all these things?
You know, we had to leave out so much as well. That's the reality. But you know, we recognize that our books are read not just in the UK but beyond, and so we were trying to gather resources of people who are more internationally, you know, vlogging, you know, to people all over the world. So we've got a kind of a real mix of American trans people and non-binary people, as well as people from the UK and beyond.
Yeah.
You've got a great amount of contacts through all your work through Transgender Europe.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, I've done a lot of like trans activism in Europe, so I know a lot of different people in different countries are doing great things with ILGA Europe and Transgender Europe and all those bigger organizations. So that's sort of where, you know, I just accumulated the knowledge that I have about, and I was like, well, this would probably be good to put in there. But there's so much more we wanted to put in there, and so many books that have been coming out that, you know, we kind of just had to say, okay, well, we can't add more, like we don't have more space on the pages. So, you know, it was just a matter of, you know, there's so many other things which you want to do and put in more books and more contacts for people. But yeah, we thought this was a great start for people. And you know, starting to read and look into those resources will lead people to other resources and stuff. So we thought it would become a bit of a snowball effect with that.
Yeah, that's the hope. Yeah.
The fact that it was international was absolutely wonderful, because it did mean that single book could help people all over the world. And I had requests from America and all over Europe, and I think even a couple in Australia as well. It really went fully international. So
that's amazing.
thank you for thinking of everyone.
Well, thank you for providing that to people. I mean, it's just so wonderful, and that's it. The one thing that I realize about this community, this broad community that we have, that you're part of, that we're part of, is that people have a really big heart as well. And I just love being part of this community. And although there can be infighting and there can be so much going on where, you know, binary people don't understand non-binary people, and we have, you know, that clash and so on. And people have, you know, lots of issues because they're generally unhappy as well. And so that can manifest in different ways. But, you know, the big heart and you know what, and also allies, you know, the mums of trans kids and so on. I just feel like it really touches me on a daily basis that people have such a big heart and what they do with that. So you're an absolute gem for doing that and following that up, and that trickle, you know, that knock-on effect of being able to send those books to those people, I think can just make someone's, you know, month. You know, it's amazing.
The donations that poured in to make it possible was, as you say, everyone pitched in, the full community and allies. It was overwhelmingly lovely. So I fully agree.
That's great.
So what's next?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, we've sort of been, we have a new agent now. So we have a few ideas coming up. You know, one of them is to write a bit more of a memoir about our lives and about what it's like to grow up being trans. So, you know, that's one of the ideas of what we might do. So yeah, and it's quite interesting because we come from really, really different backgrounds. Like I'm from icy Iceland, and I was raised in like a rural farm, and Fox was raised in Saudi Arabia. So, you know, there's real differences in the way that we have been raised and our experiences, but we somehow come together as non-binary people, and our identities are very, very similar in that aspect. And we just have an understanding, you know, if you come from completely different cultures and parts of the world. So it's an interesting, I think it will be an interesting idea to do. So that's sort of perhaps on the cards.
That's one of them. And I'm ever since I made my first kids book, this one, the with Sarah Savage, Are You a Boy or Are You a Girl? I really love making that, and that was quite a few years ago now. And ever since then, I've been just really thinking a lot about kids' books and about how to explain trans issues without ever saying the word trans. And there's been quite a few good books that have come out recently, and so I'm still kind of working on that. And I'm doing some drawings at the moment that is based on my experiences, but I don't know if that's going to be part of our memoir or whether that's going to be a kids' book in its own right. So at the moment, I'm just writing about a weekend where I go off to a supermarket and I play with a little boy, and then the boy's like, what's your name? And I'm like, oh, it's, you know, a girl name. And then, you know, the boy's like, oh, I thought you were a boy. And it's just like, there's that kind of repetition that goes on. So yeah, at the moment, we're just trying to not give ourselves too many limitations and just explore what we want to do. Because you'd eventually like to be doing like fantasy books. And
I mean, like my dream would be to like write like science fiction books about like different planets and traveling the galaxy and all those things, because I play a lot of video games. So I have a lot of like experience in playing story-based games, and I just kind of want to create my own world. I'm always kind of envious of like the people who get to create the characters and do character development in video games. And like, I wish I could do that. Well, I mean, that's the dream. I hope one day I'll be able to write some cool science fiction, and then it will of course have all the, you know, I will be critiquing current society through that and stuff. So there will be laced in things of being like, we should be doing it this way. This is a great example of a planet that's doing it right, you know. So there's loads of scope to make something that's not trans, but intrinsically it will somehow become more diverse because I am a trans person writing it. And I kind of want to be, an author that doesn't necessarily write about trans issues, but of course it's going to affect, you know, how I write and all those things. And it's a different perspective on things, I think. So I think it will be interesting. There's so many science fiction where I think if they had a trans person or someone who was slightly more aware of gender, they could do so much with this science fiction, and they could do so much with this world. And I just kind of want to be like, it's so easy to make something interesting and not fall into those traps of stereotypes that we have in our current society. So that's kind of what I want to do with that.
I can't wait.
I know, please do. Let me know. I have space on the shelves right there.
Amazing.
So thank you so much for talking to me about your books and your lives and everything you're planning, which I'm really excited about for the future. And thank you so much for writing the Trans Teen Survival Guide and helping so many people.
Oh,
it's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a lovely chat with you today. And we often chat to people and, people at just different points. Sometimes, we talk to people who just really don't understand much about trans issues, but it's so lovely to speak to another non-binary person and have this kind of not deeper conversation, but I feel like we have kind of a general knowing and understanding of each other. So that goes a long way. So
yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.